Yeah.
Okay. Um,
My
so,
thing keeps working out. Sorry.
so the case is the S.G. Cohen new recruits case. Um, and so we're going to start off by we're each going to kind of take a vote and tell who we would have hired out of the four candidates, which the two.
I read the wrong thing.
What's that?
I'm so sorry. I read the wrong one.
Oh no.
I read the Harvard Business Review, the defining guide to recruiting in good times and bad.
Oh.
That was the
Yeah,
first
it
thing
was
I had
confusing.
to
There were
read.
two different readings, and I thought that was the one too until I saw the other one.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry about that.
Well, yeah. I'll try my best to participate then.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll be able to catch on with the things we're discussing.
Okay.
So-
Stephanie, if you just go read the four people, you'll probably be able to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll log in.
It's at the very end. Just go to the very end of the case study, and there's 4 people. Just read their bios.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
So, I guess, Audra, do you want to start off by telling us which two you would hire and why?
Sure. I think I chose.
Oh, right. We're just supposed to choose which one we would have hired out of the 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I think there were 2 spots available. So,
I don't know what just happened, but like my thing keeps going off and on. But anyways, okay, the 2 people I picked were I chose the lady, Natalia Godlewska.
Yeah.
Gadluska.
Godlewska. I liked her because of her background, her high GPA, the fact that she spoke so many different languages. He had worked, let's say, a company that developed.
Looks like we lost her again. You're muted, Audra.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's being like this today. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I
Yeah.
can hear you.
No.
Okay.
Why don't let's move on to Debbie, and then we'll come back to you, Audra.
Okay. So I really liked Andy Sanchez, who was the business owner. And it looked like he was able to grow a thriving business. And I know that their biggest concern with him was his GPA average. But taking into account that he set up this business and it's a profitable business, and he also has plans for his brother to take over the business, which would allow him time to concentrate on the work at hand. I think that they should really look at him for that. You know, he got C's. C's are still passing grades, and I think he'll just have that experience of being in business, and looks like he's kind of a go-getter anyway, and I think that he would bring a lot to the company for that. So I think maybe his grade point average is something to overlook because, I mean, he passed his classes. You know, wasn't the highest, but he passed. And I think a lot of things just come from doing and on-the-job kind of experience. So I liked Andy Sanchez.
Okay. And was there one other candidate that you would pick?
Well, I did like Natalia Gadluska. With a Russian accent. Yeah, I did like that. Well, she's very versatile. I think all of her language skills is definitely going to be an asset. I think the things that they kind of dinged her for were just really petty, like, oh, she seems stiff, or whatever. You know, she's a foreigner, and not everybody's gonna like mesh right away into American culture and kind of be loosey goosey about things. But I think she's really professional. I think she has a lot to offer. So there you go.
Well, I thought it was weird that they said that she wouldn't fit in the culture when she had an MBA from Cornell.
Oh, yeah.
I was
What's up with that?
That's not a good reason. If they just don't want to have to mind their P's and Q's about it, I think that that's kind of why I was
Probably.
like, well, that's not a good reason. That's not a good enough reason. And I picked the same guy as you for my second choice. The one who didn't have the highest GPA, but he obviously was gifted in business.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and he obviously worked himself to the bone on the business.
Yeah, that shows dedication.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tyler, who were your two?
My two, I was basing everything off just experience, and so the first one I would have hired would have been Ken Goldstein or whatever, because of experience. He had more experience. He'd worked for 5 years at whatever that company, Price Waterhouse Coopers. He was one of the top 5% of his performance appraisals, put him in the top 5%. So he had more experience to me in the working world than anyone else, and so I would have gone on that. And then, yeah, I probably would have gone with Natalia on the second one if I had to hire a second one, also just based on experience, because she had also worked for some company that used Wall Street products. No, what did it say? A company that she worked for a company that Wall Street vendors used. So she's had that experience with a Wall Street feel or atmosphere. So based on experience, I would have hired those two.
Yeah. Okay, and Stephanie, did you have a chance to read up on them a little bit, or are you still?
So I read their bios. What were they looking to hire?
So they're looking to hire 2 of the 4.
For a banking position?
Yeah, for
bankers.
I don't know. I mean, as I skimmed through them, I know this sounds off the wall and nobody else mentioned this person, but the two that stood out to me, and for totally different reasons, was Martin Street, just because, and also Andy Sanchez. Both of them were kind of go-getters. They're team players. They're people who, like Andy Sanchez, he is an entrepreneur, and he could build something from nothing into something. And also with the background of Martin Street, was it Martin Street? The one that was in the military. I mean, that's a really good team playing aspect. I don't know, those two stood out to me. I don't know why, just because I read those two things. I'm just thinking when you're working in a banking industry, you have to be really good with people, and you have to be able to work with a lot of diverse personalities, but it's about creating a team to, I don't know. I think in managing people, that people who work really good at building something into nothing into something, it speaks a lot.
Okay. Cool. So.
But I skipped as well. So.
Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like you had the case.
Yeah, I liked Martin. I thought he was great, but I also felt like in the other readings they were kind of trying to get you away from the idea of just picking someone who has strong leadership skills, because they're not always teachable. And I think that was kind of why I didn't necessarily go with Martin, first off, because, yeah, he had all these great skills, but was he really acting like he wanted the job? He was still fielding offers from other people. And so that's what made them nervous, is like, if they don't accept the first offer, it's like they said, if we don't accept the first offer, we've made a mistake. So I can see why they're hesitant with him. Maybe if Martin would have shown a little more like dedication to S.T. Cohen, it might be different. But I think that's kind of why I backed away from him a little bit.
Yeah. So the two that I chose, so I did Natalia for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. I thought she definitely knows her stuff, and that's one thing that I felt they emphasized that was important was the technical skills.
Right.
And I don't know, I just felt like, I mentioned that she had a good attitude and was willing to be proactive And so I felt like that would compensate for any weaknesses that she might have. And then the other one that I liked was Ken Goldstein. I thought it sounded like he was impressive. And for those of you who don't know, PricewaterhouseCoopers is it's a public accounting firm. It's known as one of the big four public accounting firms, and if you're a manager there, then that's a pretty big deal, and that means that you've worked pretty darn hard to get there. You put in the hours, and you've shown that you have all the skills, the problem solving, the people skills, all that to move up like that in that kind of company. And so I thought that their concerns about him, being too mature or having too much of a life to balance with his work. I thought if he was able to do that at PricewaterhouseCoopers and also an MBA, I thought those concerns were not as important as his skills. But so the next thing that we're going to do is, so we all talked about who we would hire. So next thing we're going to do is go through each of the four candidates and discuss reasons why we may not want to hire them. So for Natalia, what do you guys think? What are reasons why you would not hire her?
She wasn't very good with small talk. They kind of mentioned that she wasn't very good with, like, I guess being palsy. I don't know. But I think every person I've ever met from a different country, especially European countries, they're very serious.
Reserved.
Yeah, they're very serious. They're more reserved, and so, I mean, I think that was a cop out, but I can see how that might warrant concern.
Yeah.
About them hiring her.
One thing about investment banking is it's the ones who do get in are the ones who can build connections and have really good networks, because that's really what it's about. It's about finding opportunities for your firm to invest their money in, and also finding other people who would basically selling investments to other people, like selling them like, hey, this investment is going to do great. This stock is about to be offered, and it's going to have a great return on it. And so a really important thing is having a lot of pals, is having good communication skills and good, like a really good network. And so I can understand why that would be a hesitation for them with their.
Yeah, you have to be a people person. You have to be able to communicate, be friendly, have a relationship with people outside of the business realm, be able to be a little social with them to make that connection as well, to have that small talk. What creates that bridge to where people want to work with you is because they find something in common with you, or something that they like about you on a personal level. I know that doesn't sound very business-like, but it's reality.
Yeah. Anything else anybody had to say about Natalia?
Well, they said that her, kind of the English, because you'd have to slow down for people to understand her. But that, she could always improve on that the more that
I
she
didn't
works
think
with
that was too
people.
big of a deal either.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big
She
deal
kind of seemed like the favorite between all of us. So.
Yeah. Well, and she had, I mean, 'cause she can speak 3 other languages. I'm sure she can perfect herself in English.
Yeah, and that can only help in investment banking, having all those languages.
Yeah, I would think that would be a really big asset to have. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about Martin Street? What are the negative things that you guys thought he had?
For him, the first thing that jumps out is it says he had no business experience. He had leadership experience, but no business. So that would be a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think because maybe not everything transitions over so smoothly from being a leader to being an investment banker or whatever. So the no business experience.
Well,
But
that's what
he
they
was,
said in a lot of the reading too, Debbie. It was like, don't always pick someone just because they're a good leader. Like that's not always the best thing, especially if you're working in like a group environment like they are.
yeah. Well, and sometimes leaders would tend not to listen to other people around them because they're like, think they know everything already. So that might be considered a weakness. Is just kind of like, I'm the leader. I'm not going to listen to you, kind of.
Yeah, they're not teachable. And the fact that he's coming in as like a first year banking, whatever called recruit, that that makes it difficult because yeah, there's going to be older people who do know more, do know better, and if he's not willing to listen, can't really get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt like his kind of his elusiveness with, not, how they were wary about if they extended him the offer, whether or not he would accept it. I think that kind of, to me, it reflects on maybe like a lack of commitment, maybe.
Yeah, like he was like, oh, if I get the job, whatever. Yeah, kind of like he was
Yeah.
keeping all of his options open, and he
Yeah, he wasn't taking them too seriously.
I kind of took it from a different standpoint. I thought about it because of his background, being in the military. My husband's family is a big military family, and they're methodical. They think through processes. They weigh out good and bad. I know we keep talking about he doesn't have experience, but he graduated with his MBA. Working in the military, it is like running a business. It is, depending on what he did. So I don't necessarily, he might not have banking experience in business, but the military in itself, if you're not familiar with business, I have a cousin who flies actually helicopters, who's a sergeant, and she's basically, running the business of her people that are underneath her. And so I don't know. I just kept thinking of it as maybe they were hesitant because of his style, but maybe it's more because he's methodical because of his background.
Well, I think, Stephanie, adding on that, the thing that surprised me most about him is I usually feel like military is a safe choice. Like a military background, it's a safe choice. But he seemed kind of like a loose cannon, like because he wasn't really as into the job. Do you know what I mean? Like he's kind of like, well, we'll see. I don't know. And I think maybe that's what kind of surprised me too, is I tend to think the same way you do, Stephanie. I have military in my family too, and it's just kind of like they're methodical and there's a way about them. And he obviously was in his personal life. He ran 2 marathons and a triathlon and all that stuff. But maybe he just wasn't showing the dedication they wanted to see in his job interview.
Right.
Yeah. And one thing, so I interned with a public accounting firm last winter, and they came and recruited on BYU Idaho campus here. They came and there was like a big accounting fair where a bunch of different firms came and they they interviewed me and they flew me out to their office to interview me and stuff. And I ended up getting the internship and I was extended a full-time job offer afterwards for when I graduate. And then just recently they came up to campus again to do another recruiting trip, and they asked me if I would kind of help them with like their booth at the accounting fair, and tell people about the firm and point out like classmates that I've had that kind of stood out and I thought would be a good fit. And so there were a bunch of people that came up to the table that I had in classes with me before, and I knew that they were good students and they would be a great fit with the firm. And I recommended probably like 5 or 6 guys, and the recruiters that were there ended up liking them, and they liked them enough to give them like second and third interviews where they flew them out to the office in Denver, and they extended internship offers with them. But every single one of the guys that I recommended turned down the offer. Yeah, it was kind of lame. They had, I mean, granted, I talked to each of them and they told me why, and they each had a really good other offer that they were extended that was going to pay them a lot more as well. So basically, what I'm getting at here is, I think that's a really important thing for a company, because the interview process can be long and it can be expensive for a company. Like, for instance, with mine, they actually flew them out to their office, which is not a cheap plane ticket from Rexburg. And you know, if they extend it, it's a long process. So if you get that far along where they're able to extend you an offer, and you turn them down, they kind of run out of options. You know, they aren't able to just come back up here to BYU Idaho and find some more people to replace those people that they gave offers to. You know, they're banking on, you know, those people they're extending offers to extend them. And so I don't know. That's why I felt like it was a big deal for Martin to be kind of elusive and seem like a risk for them if they were to extend the offer.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I never thought about it from that point of view, like how much money they're spending on recruiting and the plane tickets, and then to have none of them pan out. It's like you just lost thousands of dollars for no reason.
Yeah, and the opportunity. I mean, they want students from BYU Idaho, and they kind of missed out because of that. They can't come back and do another job fair for the positions they were hoping to fill. But, okay, how about Ken Goldstein?
I think it was interesting that you guys both picked him, because I was kind of like, if that was my husband, I'd say, heck no, you better not get that job. Like, you're never around. I don't know. So I think I understood it probably from the wrong point of view, because I was like, well, yeah, he has a family. He shouldn't be spending all of his time at the office. But like you guys said, his education and his work experience was incredible. But I guess that was the reason. I thought maybe he was too mature for them. You know, maybe he was at a different place in his life, and you never know what kind of personal business is going to come up in your everyday life and affect your work too.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm, you know, we're LDS and I'm a total believer of family first, but as, you know, as a manager, I have to admit it's a turnoff that someone is having to leave work for family functions and those sorts of things. That seems so judgmental with my background, but I mean, looking at it merely from a work standpoint, wouldn't be my number one pick. That's really bad, I know, to say that.
I felt bad too. I was like, I should support it.
That you guys did about him, you know, with, you know, maybe not just will it not be good for the company that he has a life outside of work, but also it might not be good for him personally. You know, he might have to neglect his home life. But I don't know. I guess what justified me picking him was I figured that he probably had learned to balance his work and home life. And one thing that I'm a believer in is if you're all work and no play, then your work is gonna it's not gonna be as good. You kind of have a life outside, and so I don't know. I thought maybe that would be a good thing for them to hire somebody who has a life outside of work.
I just felt like that was so much in the spotlight of all the comments that were made that it almost kind of gave me the feeling, like I said, I skimmed again, but gave me the feeling that it was something that was always thrown out there, that was something that was always needed to be done. And I'm just kind of putting it back into my shoes. I manage a pediatric group right now, and I'm a mom, and me and my husband swap off. He's the daytime parent, I'm the evening parent, and sometimes things come up, my husband has to be to work, and I always feel like, oh, I got to go for kids for this or that, and I always get the feedback back like, oh, well, we need you to stay longer for this, and it does put things in jeopardy for me work-wise sometimes when I have to, leave at a split notice because I have a sick kid at home. Doesn't mean I'm not a good manager or I'm not well-rounded, but there is occasions where my work does suffer for those things. That is why I should be a stay-at-home mom.
Too, because I think about when my husband got his job, like he got it straight out of college, and we had our last kid, so we had all of our kids when he graduated, and they didn't even, I hate to say it, but they didn't even know he had a family. Like, they knew he was married, and then he set up his desk, and he had all the pictures of the kids, like, in a collage, and his manager was like, oh, are those your brothers and sisters? And he's like, they're my kids, and he's like, what? And so, I mean, I applaud Ken for mentioning he had a wife and 2 kids. I mean, good for him. Like, he brought it up, he made it very clear. And maybe, like you're saying, he had obviously learned the balance between family and work. And I think it's kind of sad that people think that a family is a detriment to a career. Because it's not. If anything, it probably makes your work better because you're trying to support them and take care of them, and you'd do anything to do that,
I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the last one, Andy Sanchez.
I think the elephant in the room with him is just his grade point average. That was mentioned. I mean, that's probably the biggest red flag that he has.
What about the fact that he's kind of finicky? Like, I kind of feel like he's all over the place. Not that that's bad. He obviously has a lot of drive. But at the same time, it's like, well, I was trying to run a business, and I couldn't do that while I was in school, and so my grades suffered, and I kind of thought, well, yeah, but...
That's what I wondered about. Like, he says he's getting ready to hand off his business to his brother, but, that's probably not just going to be done overnight. If he gets this job with SG Cowan, is he still going to be invested in 2 different places? And that would be hard to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but his SATs and the GMATs were high. So you have to kind of weigh that into the balance of it.
I'm definitely one who is a proponent, I guess, that grades in school aren't the most important things. I mean, they aren't the only way that you can show your ingenuity and your worth. And so I thought that it was good that he was an entrepreneur, showed that he knew how to get a business up and going. That his test scores were so high, showed that he was really smart naturally. But I think the biggest red flag was just that it seemed like he couldn't really give all of his attention and focus to it. And with investment banking, that's an important thing. That's a big job. It's an important job, and there's a lot of money on the line with the deals that you're doing. And if you aren't committed, if you aren't completely focused, then you're going to be doing 2 different jobs at 75%.
Yeah, no. I mean, school, I think more than 50% in school is just dedication. If you dedicate yourself to it, you can get a decent grade. I'm with you. I don't think grades show that much about somebody. I think some of the best business people in the world have not even gone to college. But I'm also thinking, why in the Stampede are you putting your grade point average out there for everybody to know? Nobody else listed their grade point average, and that's not something I'd want to be broadcasting out there. I'd want to be broadcasting more, I've built a business, I'm this, I'm that, not my grade point average.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he did that because he wasn't ashamed of it. He said, he probably had the same thinking, grades aren't everything. And they aren't. I don't think grades are everything either. And he did have very high scores on those tests, but it also made me think, is he going to be I don't want to say cocky, but like, will he be teachable if he's so naturally smart, which it sounds like he is, and he's an entrepreneur and everything else? Is he still teachable though? Will he maybe think he knows best because he has run a successful business? That I think that is kind of what I still picked him because I thought he really had a lot of gusto, but I could see how that would kind of be a hang up if he's not teachable.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
So were you guys surprised by the diversity in our responses for who we would hire? Like,
I was surprised only the dudes picked the dad. Like,
yeah.
I feel kind of bad about that. Like,
Well, I don't think so. I think that diversity is going to happen. I mean, we all have different backgrounds. We all have different majors. We all have different jobs that we do. We are all looking at it from a different aspect. Young
Yeah.
parents, older parents, people without kids. I mean, we're all looking at it from a different standpoint. And I think that's why it's like when they mentioned in the, defining guide of how to recruit, they talked about it not just the decision, not just being an up to one person. They talked about including others in it to get different aspects of things. There was things that I thought, and I've interviewed a million people and think I never thought of asking that or thinking that. So if you do have a spectrum of people, you do get things stand out that you wouldn't even have thought about.
Well, and something that somebody takes to be as a detriment, another person will see as an asset. So that's kind of an interesting.
well, like how they were saying that one guy sounded too salesy, but then the other guy thought, oh, he's really got a lot of, pep in him and stuff like that, and so they both totally saw a different side of the same guy. They saw a different part of it.
So this is answering pretty well the next question, which is why is there so much disagreement between the senior bankers in the Saturday meeting about which recruits to hire? But I think Stephanie answered that pretty well with saying everybody has different backgrounds, they all value different things, but let's see.
Well, I also think that, like, how if two interviews are going to be the same, like if I go to one and then I'm going to learn something from that one, when I go to the next one, I'm going to maybe say something different, and so each of these interviewers could have seen a little bit of a different side of each of the interviewees, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So your perspective is going to be different as well. The interviewer is going to get better at asking questions, and the interviewee is going to say different things too.
Yeah, I've also been where I've had a great interview with someone and thinking, where have you been my whole life? You're my perfect candidate. And then they get into the job and I'm like, what was I thinking? You're horrible. So there's some people who are awesome interviewers. They can talk themselves up and, be amazing. But when it comes down to doing the job, they just can't perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking another thing too. I mean, the Super Saturday is like 5 half-hour sessions. That's a lot. Like, you have to think about how a person changes from the first interview to the last one. They're tired, or their interviewee is tired.
Yeah.
Tired of asking the same questions, so they might have a different opinion about someone. That almost kind of makes it unfair because you're not seeing it with fresh eyes every time.
Yeah.
If they're directly comparing people to each other.
So this leads into the next question. Might there be better ways to learn about the candidates than traditional interviews? And what other things would you suggest that they try?
I really, well, I like two things. And I'm sorry, I always use my background managing, but I always do working interviews. So, like, I'll interview someone, and if I think they're amazing because of my experience of hiring someone and then they're not so great, is I'll have them come in for a full day and have them shadow the first half of the day, and the second half of the day actually have them and see how they interact or work with, and granted it's a different background, but I work in the medical field, how they can perform. The other thing is sometimes when we do group, we even do group interviews, we do team building, like, here is this problem before you, how would you handle it, and break them into groups and see how well they communicate and work with others.
That's good.
One way that I was hired before was it was like bosses got together, like all the managers, and then I would come in, they would like have my resume, and like they would sit there and ask me questions, and then I would go out and they would like talk about you essentially, which I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I feel like that's an option because that way you're all in the group, it's all fresh in your minds, you're not having to look back at your notes, and you can all kind of gather from each other, I guess, the first impression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought of while I was reading this was the reason why it's so hard for them to decide on somebody is because there's so many of them involved in the decision-making process and so many of them that interviewed. I thought it might be better, I think it's great that they have senior managers involved and they're involving people from different, on different ends of the totem pole in the company. But I thought maybe make the actual interviewing a little bit shorter, have less people interview them and have less people be involved in the interview process, and kind of like how Stephanie suggested, involve things other than just an interview to evaluate them. And I did actually like how they used so many, like it seemed like they used references a lot in their decision.
Yeah, I wonder. I was also going to say, and it was probably part of your next question, Brandon, but yeah, I don't know if they have a standardized interview questions they're asking. Is each one asking something that pertains only to their department or their expertise? So, I think that would need to be somewhat standard so that you're getting the same questions to everyone.
Yeah.
Was that the reading that talked about, like, when making a decision, like, not to base it on, okay, this person is great for the company, but if you had to hire them for your team, would you still want them on your team? Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. Here are some suggestions that the discussion outline has for different ways they could go about the hiring process. It says have applicants demonstrate the ability to do certain job tasks, have them spend a whole day with somebody or with someone to see what the job is like, have them do internships, do the interviews, but focus on behavioral questions like, tell me about a time when you disagreed with your boss. What did you do? And have interviewers ask the same questions and evaluate applicants based on the same criteria. So those were things that a lot of those we mentioned.
Just out of curiosity, has anybody ever, like, job shadowed?
A ton.
I've done it a couple times when I worked at JetBlue, just looking at different departments other than reservations, and I had fun when I was doing it. I mean, didn't get paid anything, but it was interesting to see what was involved, because then it helped me make a decision of, oh, do I really want to apply for this department? And there was one I thought I did, and I'm like, I'm like, that's not the job for me. So I found it to be a useful tool.
That's a good point.
I did have the thought that they could use internships more, because that's really like an extended, long-term, like two-way interview where both the candidate and the firm are able to evaluate whether or not this is a good fit on both sides. Only problem is that it's not as quick of a hire, and it might be a bit more expensive.
Well, and didn't they say in the reading recruiting isn't done until the person is fully integrated into the company?
Yeah.
Like I get what you're saying though. It'd probably be good to have like an extended internship process, even though it might cost them a little money. It might save them in the long run.
Yeah.
To really get the people they really want.
Yeah. So. SG Cohen's recruiting, like the way that they recruit from these MBA schools, did you guys understand all that? How they have like little hubs set up at each school?
Like, yeah, like each school had a team captain when they went for their recruiting purposes.
Yeah. So
They were
deciding.
focused not on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It seemed like they were focused not on like the top 10 schools like your Harvard and stuff. They knew other companies were going after those, so they were kind of looking at the next. I don't want to say like next tier, but like the next
Next
10.
year.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So they were targeting a different audience than some of their competitors were, which is I thought a smart move for them.
Okay. Yeah. So what this is asking is, it says deciding which business schools to recruit at was controversial. Why was the choice of which schools to recruit at so important to SG Cohen?
They talked about the culture a lot, like the importance of having the same culture, but I also kind of thought it was kind of snooty the way they were going about it. I don't know. I like kind of just
Oh, we lost Audra.
Okay.
Hang on, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So why was the choice of which schools to recruit at so important to SG Cohen?
Um, well, I mean, they're looking for quality people. And I like the point that he made. This is the recruiter guy, Schellenberg. He told the recruits it doesn't matter what you did before. What matters is that you have demonstrated a pattern of success. Because I think that was just showing that they were looking, not necessarily for the rich kids or whatever who were at the snooty school,
Yeah.
but they were looking for people who could achieve something and bring something to the company.
But it's interesting that they're all completely different people. If they're picking schools because they think they'll have a certain product coming out,
Mm-hmm.
these choices, none of them are the same. So
Yeah.
to me, I'm agreeing with Audra on this. It's a little snooty because I mean, some awesome students can come out of BYU. Awesome students can come out of Harvard. I mean, it's all about, I think, your desire to have debt, there's a lot of reasons why. Desire to stay close home for a sick relative. I know plenty of people who've passed up opportunities to go to Ivy League schools to stay home to take care of a dying mother. It's so funny to me because these people are so completely different.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that was kind of what Ray, like his strategy was saying, is that they don't need the top 10 schools. They can go with the next best ones. Just make sure to get the top performing students in each of those schools.
Right.
But to speak to the point of them only recruiting at like the top schools, I can understand that because I mean it's one thing to do your undergraduate at like an Ivy League school or one of these really prestigious universities, but to get into like the MBA business program, that's a whole other thing in and of itself. And you have to be really impressive to get into these schools, not just with like grades, but with life and work experience. They want the most prestigious thing about those schools, like about Harvard and Cornell and Yale and all these places, is not the teaching necessarily that you're going to be getting, but the people that you're going to be surrounded with. And so, if you go to Harvard and you go to the Harvard Business School, you know that you're going to get good instruction, but more importantly, you're going to build up a network of really, really top-notch people who are more than likely going to be very successful at what they do.
That's a good point.
well, and I think a lot of times people go to school planning on the fact that they know they'll have more opportunities. Like, yeah, if you go to an Ivy League school, you're going to have more connections, more opportunities with those people who are Ivy League graduates, and that's just part of it. It's all about the community and stuff like that. And that's kind of true anywhere, I think. Like, I mean, I live in Washington, and if you go to Eastern, you're like the bee's knees. You got a lot more choices in Spokane in general because they want people who've graduated from here. They want people who've been around here. So to me, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Well, for Ray's strategy, well, because they were hiring the top students from, not those top 10 schools, but because the top 10 schools, they used to be like middle of the class people that they would recruit, but when they went down that tier, they noticed that they were top of the class and they were more loyal to the company. So having that loyalty, that will pay dividends back to you.
Yeah. I'm also one who's a big, I don't know, I feel like I'm the person at the lower tier school, who didn't get into the better schools, but I still feel like, and I'm confident that I have value to add to different companies and, in business. I don't know, I don't always feel like the school that you get into is completely telling of
a representation of who you are.
Yeah, and the type of value that you can bring to a business.
Well, I also think it's about, and this is a little off topic, but what your desire is for your life. I mean, I have a brother-in-law who went to Princeton for undergrad and then went to BYU Law, and he is one of these top executives that we're talking about, but he is never home. He's always constantly traveling. He doesn't, not with his children a whole lot. He has a wife who basically raises their kids. And I think it's an awesome opportunity for him, but it's not the life that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
you gotta, I guess when you're talking about education, you have to know what you're striving for in your life, first off.
Yeah, I guess your why behind it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna just discuss one more thing and then wrap it up real quick.
Okay.
So for the Super Saturday thing that they do, what are the objectives of it, do you guys feel?
Yep.
I think to get the most dedicated people who want to work there, like the most dedicated recruits, because they were supposed to go on those, like the educational interviews or something like that, and those were at their own cost and stuff like that. So I think that the Super Saturday is just kind of like a chance for them not to go on like a hiring spree because they obviously cut down who they said they get like 15 or something out of the 20. So they hire a lot of them, but it seems like they're just trying to find the best people in that group that they feel like are good candidates. I think once you see like a room full of people together, you can almost kind of see who you'd prefer, like to work at your company. I hate to say like judge a book by its cover, but sometimes when you get people together, comparison is the best tool to tell you what you really want.
I also think it's an opportunity that they can collectively come together. I mean, they're all there for one purpose, to find candidates. They're all looking together. Where if you're individually interviewing as your need becomes apparent, those people aren't always available to come together in the same capacity as they are in doing something like a Super Saturday.
Yeah. So do you guys feel like any of the objectives of Super Saturday conflict with one another?
I don't know. I would say in the sense that they're trying to identify the best talent, and you know, I almost wonder sometimes if it's just too fast and too much. Yes, maybe they have an informational interview beforehand, but it almost seems like the Super Saturday is kind of all or nothing.
Yeah.
And so it might just be a little bit too much at once. I wonder. I don't know. Maybe it's great, but.
Well, what if one of your candidates gets like food poisoning from the Friday night like mix and mingle? Like, I mean, that kind of sucks.
Bad luck.
But yeah, but they don't have another choice. And I think Tyler brings up a good point. It's like all or nothing. Like you either do good there or you're screwed. Like, I don't know. It seems too quick.
Don't eat the seafood at the mix and mingle.
Just stay away. Just stay away from the food. The buffet is not good.
I
Yeah.
guess there's pressure to make a good first impression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we
I feel
want to
like-
make a good first impression, but it seems like that's it. That's your final end-all, be-all.
Well, and you wonder if they would have seen like the woman like by herself, like not chit-chatting with a bunch of people. Maybe they wouldn't see her having problems with small talk, you know. Maybe that person is just uncomfortable in a group setting, you know,
Yeah.
and they're still trying to learn how to socialize. That doesn't mean they're not a good banker. But, you know, I think that's part of it too, is if people don't quite have the social skills, I mean, they should if they're at that level, but still.
But also, these people are people you're in direct competition with. How friendly are you really wanting to get with them?
I know.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's kind of, you know.
Well, I
That's
think that's
true.
one of the things that they were looking at is how they deal with people who they know that they're competing with. You know, it was a big positive thing for them to see somebody who interacted well with the other candidates and was, you know, kind and positive with them, even though they were competing with them. But I don't know. I think there are pros and cons to Super Saturday. I think it's, you know, it's good to, like you guys have been mentioning, see them how they interact with each other and how they look in a group. Cons, I would say, are, you know, it's just a little bit overboard. Sometimes seems a little bit much.
Kind of like a meat market.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when I was reading, I'm like, is this more for the associates and the executives than the recruits? Like, I don't know. Does it pump their ego to be like, well, I get to decide, got to impress me, you know? Like, I don't know.
It's like speed dating. It's like speed
Yeah.
dating.
Horrible version of speed dating.
Yeah. There's a lot more on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. I'm done.
Okay, so what do you guys feel is the difference between recruiting and hiring?
Well, recruiting, you would think that that person is going to be with the company for a long time. So you want loyalty when you're recruiting somebody. Hiring, to me, kind of has a connotation of, oh, we need like a substitute teacher to fill in until we find somebody that's going to fit.
I think of recruiting as you're looking for someone who's you hope to be the fit, and you're finding out it's that time of it's a dating period, you know, and then if everything works and they mesh well and they're doing the job, then we go on to marriage. And sometimes people never make it past the recruiting, even when they get into the job. In those first 90 days, that's still the recruiting period. They might not ever make it past there, and then they're let go. They're not actually ever really hired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what did you guys learn about recruiting and what did you learn about hiring?
Not to
I
ever
learned
leave
that
my
I've never
job.
been recruited, like ever. I've only been hired, so I don't know. It's pretty sad, but I think recruiting comes with higher paying, like higher level jobs, like career jobs, in my personal opinion, and hiring is more with lower education, not as important jobs.
I second
At
that.
least that's what I think. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. They don't recruit you at McDonald's. I'll just put it that way. They're hoping you don't stay there forever. So.
I'll tell you, I was recruited for this job that I have right now, and it was intimidating, you know, to have someone approach me and wanting me to interview for a job, because that's a lot of pressure that you're under, and it's like, can I really live up to these expectations that they think that they know about me?
Yeah, that's scary.
It was my first experience, and I hope I don't have to do it again for a long while.
Well, I was like, I don't know, I was part of the recruiting process, like I mentioned before, with the company I interned at, and it was a positive experience for me, because there were a lot of different firms that came to the little Meet the Firms thing that they did on campus here, and I don't know, it gave me a really good idea of what was out there for me, and I don't know, I just felt like I got a really good insight into my career and the the different options that I had and what to expect.
Did it kind of boost your confidence, Brandon? Like,
Yeah, nobody ever really wanted me like that before, but the thing is, it wasn't just me. It was like there was a lot of different companies there, and they all were very interested in the students that were at this little event.
well, I
And so,
think it would make you feel good that like all your hard work is paying off, like
yeah,
yeah, I am in college and people do want me because of the things I'm learning, and I think that's probably the coolest part. I guess I kind of did get recruited. I'm just going for my AAS in administrative assisting, but this lady found out at church that I was doing it, and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to retire in a couple years. You should come. You'd be a good fit for our company." And I was like, I'm not really looking to work. I'm just getting my degree right now. But it was kind of a different feeling, like, oh, I've gained skills that are important to other people, and I can benefit another company. Like, it does make you feel good about yourself a little bit, like you have worth in what you're doing, you know.
I guess for me, I guess to sum it all up, the recruiting process is important, and it's something that needs to be approached in the right way by both sides of it, both the recruiter and the recruitee. But that wraps up our discussion about this. It tells me to ask you guys to give me feedback on how I did as a leader. I will not pressure you into doing that. If you don't want to say anything, that's fine.
Thank you
I
for
will just
keeping
talk
us
about
on task and on time.
Yeah, 2 thumbs
You
up.
did great, Brandon.
it. Thanks.
2 thumbs way up.
Yep.
Oh,
Now don't blush or anything.
We're recruiting you for our group. You
awesome.
win the team.
I'm glad I'm finally going to be part of it.
Okay.